This award recognizes individuals who have provided significant service and demonstrated leadership in the advance of language, second language education in Canada. And I'd like to thank CASALT for inviting me to present this award to a dear friend and colleague who recently, this past May, joined her creator. Mary Joy Galiwalulux, Turtle Clan of the Oneida Nation of the Thames, lived her life in Oneida and dedicated her life to the regenesis of the Oneida language. Daughter of Daisy and Russell, mother of Ron, Dana, and Erica Gyost, she understood and respected the importance of family, education, cultural moments in everyday life, and the over-embracing Oneida of the Thames cultural traditions and ceremony in the language learning process. I first met Mary 28 years ago in a master's class at Western University. At that time, her nation was setting off on a path for facilitating, supporting, and teaching their language, even though they had just been informed that according to the numbers from the census, their language was now officially moribund. So imagine the Golden Girls. You ever watch that program, The Golden Girls? You know how they sort of said, yeah, fine, get out of the way. Or that commercial where the woman says, get off my lawn. That's what these speakers did. They said, get off my lawn. And they and the council and this small band of very mighty elders and speakers, many of whom were women, they formed something called the Oneida Language and Cultural Center. Its key purpose was the regenesis of the language. Galiwalulux is Mary's name, was appointed the director. At the meeting of the Longhouse that month, it was suggested that perhaps teaching their language to the community might be best served and best accomplished using second language strategies and second language teaching strategies. Thus, Mary came here to CASALT, and she attended many, many conferences, listened to people speak about all kinds of approaches that were working in the various provinces. And the one in particular that interested her was language nests that she came across when she was in Fredericton. And the other was the action-oriented approach that we hear about in the Common European Framework. So Mary embarked on this great and wonderful discovery. She didn't just read the researchers, she called them. She wrote to them, and they wrote back. Unbelievably, she had an active researcher community formed with researchers from Hawaii, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, Southern Turtle Island, which we call the United States, and Ireland. The Irish connection, I think you would recognize Dr. David Little, who was one of the authors of the CEFR. She made it very important to create a space for the speakers to meet once a month, if not more often, at the center. And they would have a meal, sit and speak in the language, and say, okay, Mary, here's our wouldn't it be nice if we had this. And it was Mary's job, which in many cases when I heard them, thought this is impossible. They made this list for her, and her quest was to reach out and search for these various things. So, you know what it's like to be teaching in a situation, I'm sure at some time or another, when you have nothing to support you, and you think, how can I show up at school tomorrow because I need this, and this. Well, in their case, they had an oral language and they wanted to have a curriculum, which meant written language. Well, what form of the written language? So Mary, incredibly, pulled together the speakers of 3 different communities, one in upstate New York, one in Wisconsin, and then her own community at the Oneida Nation of the Thames, just southwest of London. They all came there, and the young people came and said, "How do you say pizza?" And the elders would sit together and they'd say, "Well, that depends. What kind of bread?" Because their language is very much, I would compare it very much to the language, my language learning of Latin, German, where specifics are very particular. You must be specific if this is a hard crust or a soft crust or whatever. And they have a whole series of prefixes and so on with their language, not to mention the aspirators. So, using the h in the words to make them work. They arrived after 2 years at creating a written form of the language, which they ran past researchers, linguistics, professors who were knowledgeable. They would hear the speaker speak and they would see the written word and they said, yeah, that matches. And so from there, and I invite you now with your phones because it is the end of the day and you must be exhausted. And Mary is already saying, Maureen, get on with it. Take out your phones and go to the Oneida Language and Cultural Center. So it might be OLCC. And is it .org? But if you write in Oneida Language and Cultural Center and click on it, they created this website so that immediately the people in the nation would have a list of words. They would hear the speakers speak them. They had all kinds of resources. They did that, and if you go through it, there's videos. It's unbelievable what they created in 2 years. And it's things like videos of the speakers speaking with family members or at community moments, speakers introducing themselves using the traditional ways, playing and watching lacrosse, welcoming a new baby to a family, interacting at the hunt camp, communicating, this one's really, I think, impressive, communicating with deaf members in the Oneida community in Oneida Sign Language, playing pool, calling each other on the telephone, and even telling stories like why we have mosquitoes. So they had this bank of phrase and vocabulary words. They were starting to explain what the history and morning prayer was, and they had songs and singers of songs and Oneida stories, and they had something called Toto's Corner, and you'll see that probably at the bottom of the page, where each one of the speakers is featured, and they're teaching you something that's practical. So the action-oriented approach, everyday life, and able to build up can-do statements. So Mary got involved with learning about descriptors, how to write descriptors, how to do testing. She was very interested in the DELF program and took training in DELF. Came back. Now, you've got to remember, these speakers, the youngest is probably 75. And some more joined the group as some passed, but they wanted to be involved. And right now, they have a whole testing system based on the Common European Framework's reference, as well as creating a form of, they call it Oneidaizing, the testing instrument that is used for testing like DELF, where you test the written, the oral, the listening, and the speaking. And they created that, and they're running that now. They've written full curriculums for the local log house school, and it's a whole full curriculum with any materials that you need in order to teach it, grades 1 to 8. Now, this is the impossible. Mary somehow got a hold of used equipment that had one time been used in Desert Storm when they didn't have enough interpreters So they had it so you would speak in English. The soldiers were speaking in English, and then they'd press the button, and they would hear what that they would say it in the language, and they'd hold it up. So the speaker sat down, and they erased the banks, got all these Desert Storm things that are worth I don't know how many thousands of dollars, and they got them so that the teachers teaching in the schools that they're kind of nervous about speaking Oneida, they whisper into this thing and then press the button, and the kids can hear one of the speakers from the community speaking the sentence that they're wanting to teach. So the teacher is learning as well as the students, and they talk about the whole learning process and so on. They also have it now that they have something called people weren't speaking in the community, so they talk the band office into setting aside time so everyone that is a firefighter, everyone that offers medical assistance and aid in the community, and those who work at the band office would come in for training to do A1.1 or A1.2 in the language so that they could use it, go out the door and use it the next day in the community with people within the community. They're now offering coffee hours, which are online, and you'll see coffee hours there. But all along, it's been research-based. And if Mary were here, she would tell you that Dr. David Little has just been incredibly awesome in supporting them. And he shared with them their experience of supporting English second language learning to the Romani populations in Ireland, and how they moved about and how they would meet them at certain camping areas. And this is how we set up our curriculum. So they've set it up in a similar way. They were still in communication with these researchers in Hawaii and New Zealand and Britain and the United States, and there's now the young woman who's taken over for Mary is getting calls from kind of famous people, and she's just hanging in there so far, so she's becoming mighty as well. They have ultimately adopted the action-oriented approach, the CFR model, and the DELF form of testing as their main go-to, but they do keep language nests for those who just want to have a speaker who is willing to work with one person in the community, and they get together and they maybe make a meal or something like that together. So Mary, because of all of her work involved in this, and you can see from that webpage, and there's much more that you don't even know about. Mary had her doctorate written and unfortunately died of cancer before she could do her last presentation. And on my way coming up here yesterday, I received an email saying that the university felt she had met all the other requirements for her doctorate. So I can tell you she's now Dr. Mary Joy Eliza.